Cake Lady here. I am working on a project. About a week and a half ago, I made a sourdough bread, and it was my first attempt at a sourdough bread. It was my first attempt using a starter for the sourdough bread that I had used. And I'll post the link down here to my Facebook page on the video. It did not turn out very well. The dough did not rise like I thought it should. It was super hard. I understand sourdough bread should be crunchy, but that bread should not have been that crunchy. So I did a couple of things differently. In the recipe, it says to add your flour to the yeast after you let it dissolve in water. What I did before I added my yeast, or added the flour to my mixture, was I let the yeast sit in warm water for about 5 minutes. I used bread flour instead of all-purpose, and then instead of trying to knead it by hand, I just put it in my KitchenAid stand mixer with the dough hook, and I kneaded it after I got all the flour mixed in and incorporated. I let it sit there for about almost 10 minutes, really, probably about 8 to 10 minutes, to really get the gluten activated and get it working. Right here is my dough. It already feels better. It feels a lot softer, more elastic, and not sticky. It doesn't feel, for lack of a better word, it felt dense before I even baked it. So it feels better already. And then I have my starter here in my little bowl, and I fed it. To feed a starter, you just mix in water and flour equal parts. I'm going to let it set out on my counter for an hour, then I'm going to stick it back in the fridge where I've had it all week. Hopefully that will take care of it. So now all I have to do is let the dough rise for about an hour and a half. Then I will put it in a bread pan and let it rise for another hour and a half, or about another hour. Then I'll bake it for about 25 minutes. I'm in for a long night because it's already 8:45, so this is going to be a long process, but I wanted to go ahead and get it going to see if it worked or not. So tomorrow morning, hopefully we'll have a new video up where you can see it and see how it went. If this is it, if it doesn't work this time around, I don't know what I'm going to do. We'll figure it out. But thanks for hanging out with me. More to come. Well, let's just see it later. But here's one last look at the yummy sourdough bread dough. Okay, here is the bread, or the dough, sorry, after it has been rising for a little over an hour. So the recipe says to let it rise 1 hour to 1.5 hours. And so I think I'm going to go ahead, and I'm supposed to punch it down, let it rest for about 10 minutes, and then put it in the bread pan. And actually I'm going to divide it into two, and I'm going to make 2 loaves. And then I'm going to let that bread rise for about another hour, and then we'll bake it. And it's already looking a lot better than it did the last time that I made this, so I feel confident that it's going to go better. So we'll find out here in a little bit. Hey everybody, good morning. So last night I baked the sourdough bread. I had a really great rise on the bread in the bowl. It doubled and probably more in size, and I punched it down and divided it into 2 and baked it in bread loaves. Now you'll remember my problem last time was it was super hard, like break a tooth hard on the outside, but the inside was nice and soft, a little underbaked though. So I changed up a few things. I used bread flour was the first thing I changed instead of all-purpose flour. I tried to make my starter a little better. I stored it in the refrigerator for the week instead of just leaving it out on the counter, which they said you can do. You can store it in the fridge, or you can put it out on the counter. And then before I mixed in all my flour and salt and baking soda and things like that, I let the yeast that I was using for the bread kind of activate for about 5 minutes in water. And between the 3 of those, I felt like I got a really good rise. Now, maybe I don't know what sourdough bread is supposed to be like, because I feel like it's still really hard. So here's the bread. It's hard. Now, if you saw my video from Facebook, and I'll post the link to it hear in a little bit, but it wasn't quite as hard as it ended up being. If you squeeze it, you can kind of hear the crunch of the bread. So maybe that's what sourdough is supposed to be like. It doesn't feel quite as dense as it did before. So I feel like I got it at least a little bit lighter. So my son Braden, he's here. Say hi, Braden.
Hi.
He is going to be my taste tester. He tasted it last time, and you could hear crunch, crunch, crunch. It was really, it was really bad. So we are going to attempt to cut it. I'm going to have to flip the camera around here and cut it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut a piece of this bread and give it to my quality control people, my children. And one thing I read about on like what I did wrong was some people suggested while it's cooling, cover it with a tea towel. So Brandon, if you want to show them right here, I covered it last night when it was still warm. And the thought was, okay, go ahead. The thought was that it would like, I guess, capture some of the steam and get back into the bread and soften up the crust. And I don't know that it helped. Maybe it did. So here we go. We're going to cut into the loaf of bread. And you can see it's tough to get going, but once you start, then it goes pretty good through the bread. These are great knives I got at Costco. Really love them. This is a great bread knife. So I have my lovely assistants here who are going to help taste test it, and we'll turn it around. So we got my son Braden. He's quality control manager, and then my daughter Sophie, and they're going to tell me their honest opinion on what they think of the bread.
It's a lot better than your last one.
Better than the last batch I did? What do you think, Soph? Is it as crunchy?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to pull it off.
Yeah, it's a little, I mean, it's a little denser. It's not your light, fluffy bread. How's the taste?
Good.
It's a lot better.
Mini.
What do you mean it's a lot better? Better how?
Well, you can really taste the sour dough
Okay.
in the bread. I like your last one.
How does Minnie like it?
Minnie, do you like my bread? Okay, well, the dog likes it. So that's something. Kids like it, right? So this versus the other loaf of sourdough bread.
Yes.
What do you think?
This one.
This one's better? What do you think, Sophie? Is this one better?
Is it still kind of like sour juice?
Mhm.
Like, yeah, I think your other batch was better.
The other batch was, so we're split. It's definitely not as crunchy, not as hard. So we have that going for us. Okay. We have a split decision here at the Jones household. So we'll see what happens. But I feel like it did a little better, especially the rise. So, all right. What do you think,
I really
Minnie?
like the crust.
What do you think, Minnie? Yeah. Can you dance? Dance.
Minnie,
Aw.
dance.
Good job. All right. Can you tell everybody?
She taught it.
Oh,
She taught
I
it.
missed it. Aw. Can you tell everybody bye for me?
Bye.
All right. From our kitchen to yours, thanks for tuning in.